Yo, what's up, guys? Final one for the day. Members quit the journalist union after being asked to support the ceasefire. And in reality, they weren't being asked to support the ceasefire. They were being asked to wear Palestinian colors in support of Palestine, which could easily be confused in the polarized conversation that we have today as a support for Hamas, right? And so I can understand why people would especially have hesitation for supporting something like that, especially publicly, and especially when they don't have the chance to express in a more nuanced fashion what they're supporting, right? Several BBC staff members quit the journalists' union after being told to wear the colors of the Palestinian flag, Jewish News reported on Wednesday. The National Union of Journalists and the Trades Union of Congress reportedly sent messages asking workers to wear something red, green, or black, or a Palestinian keffiyeh. This directive is part of a Day of Action for Palestine, an event calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. One BBC staff member told Jewish News that this is hypocritical and anti-Semitic, a suggestion that was a breach of BBC's commitment to impartial reporting, saying BBC journalists who pride themselves on impartiality and who fought to keep the NUJ free from politics are being encouraged to break the BBC's editorial guidelines by supporting a political cause. Now, that's a really good point, and that's exactly what I was talking about, right? I think that in a lot of ways, it starts reducing trust in your media institutions when we see them taking certain stances on things like this. I prefer for the news to strive for a much more impartial and just direct telling us what happened, right? And it's also interesting on the other end is this is part of a larger campaign in BBC, and that is in the context of the immigration issues that the UK is having right now, and the problems that they're having with how they've attempted to embrace multiculturalism without any sort of cultural assimilation, right? And so you see in the UK one culture taking over another culture, and I think this is a perfect example of that, actually. And in a lot of ways, people in the UK are upset about the loss of what they feel like is their birthright or the culture that they were born into of like Victorian tradition, right? And that's being replaced in many ways by more Middle Eastern traditions because of the massive amounts of people that are coming in. Now, that's not to say that there aren't Muslim people coming in that view themselves as British, want to adopt British traditions, and or want to synthesize those British traditions with their cultural heritage and live in a peaceful way with their British neighbors. I'm not saying that at all. But at the same time, when your government does nothing to promote cultural assimilation to the people that are brought in, and in fact attempts to promote cultural assimilation to their domestic population, it ends up creating a feeling in people like they have no space for themselves and they have no refuge, right? People need to feel like they belong somewhere psychologically because it's attached to their perception of status and their perception of community. And those are attached to feelings of safety and the guarantees of survival into the future. And so when you start alienating people from their culture, when they haven't moved anywhere, they haven't gone anywhere, and they haven't made that choice, you're supplanting them away from their stable base, right? Their emotional stable base. And when that happens, people get scared. And when people get scared, they fall into tribalism as a defense mechanism to try to regain that emotional community stability, right? And we're seeing that in the UK right now, a major fall into tribalism on both sides, where while the right has major, massive points, absolutely, Tommy Robinson is saying things that make sense, right? It is being taken to a level of antagonization that does not do anything to improve the dialogue and reduce tensions in their country moving into the future. And so when that level of antagonization is met, and you meet, and I get it. They're being provoked. They're being, and they feel threatened by the loss of their culture. I understand, and I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything like that. What I'm saying is, when you respond with fire, it just makes things worse. And that's why we see in the government, which has already taken a side, right? And that side is the side of the population they're bringing in, is already a two-tier justice system. They call him Tier Kier because there are court cases where a white dude, a British dude who's in an immigration reform protest gets arrested, and he's charged with some level of rioting or insurrection just for being there, just for standing and watching, right? And then you've got Muslims who the media told them that protest was an anti-race protest, and it was xenophobic and anti-Muslim. And so you've got these Muslims over there in the UK who then are running around chasing people down, beating them, and they're getting off. So there's a two-tier justice system in the UK, and this issue right here perfectly exemplifies how the UK government has taken a side. They're applying their justice system completely inappropriately, and they're attempting to suppress and push a specific narrative when their culture does not agree with it at all. And so it's good to see people standing up. I don't want people to confuse me being happy about people standing up against institutions pushing a specific message here and confuse that for being anti-Palestine or anti-ending the war. I absolutely want the death to stop, right? I want the death to stop. That's it for me personally. I wish Israel was engaging in surgical strikes against the exact people that are causing the issue, because they've got a lot of support from the U.S. I was talking about this earlier. They've got a lot of support from the U.S. The U.S. is there with the resources, the power, and we can get people in anywhere in the world, I believe, in around an hour. So, I mean, dude, like the fact that we're just sending them bombs, the fact that they're just bombing people while relying on their Iron Dome, like, I don't support that at all. I think that's wrong. The situation with Netanyahu is really confusing. I mean, there's multiple Cold Wars being fought in the institutions of our government in this country right now, and Netanyahu's faction within Israel has aligned itself with a faction of U.S. Special Operations Command in the U.S. that are engaging in what I consider to be really positive work, right? And so it's hard for me to straight come out against Israel, even Netanyahu's faction, because of how our Overton window has benefited over the past 10 years from everything going on. But at the same time, like, it's wrong what they're doing, right? And there needs to be a response that discourages this kind of thing moving into the future from other actors, right? So I definitely am kind of sitting in the middle on the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I just want the bloodshed to end for real. But let's continue. In a message to NUJ members, the union responded, "Clearly, members working across the BBC and in public service broadcasting have important duties in relation to impartiality and work within social media guidelines the NUJ would not wish members to breach." According to the Jewish News, more members of the NUJ are expected to resign following the situation. Charlotte Henry, a freelance journalist who resigned, wrote that the union had become a hostile environment for Jews, and I can no longer be part of that. Okay, so I was going to say, I wonder if a lot of the people resigning are of Jewish descent, because the Jewish community networks really well. They've got a system of community and a synagogue system where they support each other's businesses very effectively. I worked in a business that made the rounds to a lot of bat mitzvahs and Jewish events, right? And it was in a really wealthy area. And you ended up seeing a lot of the same people in what seemed to be unrelated kind of celebrations, right? And so what I realized was, man, they are so great at networking and establishing a common identity and bringing their children and the next generation into that networking process and making that system of networking a part of the community, that the Jewish community has really been able to establish themselves in industries, right? In positions of influence in industries across many different fields. And a lot of people get conspiratorial with it. In reality, they have a really efficient system of cultural homogeneity that I think has lended itself to, through the cycles of history, favoring them, right? I think that's what's going on. I don't think it's some kind of Jewish conspiracy, Jewish people controlling everything. There's nuances relating to Judaism and secular Zionism that I am not willing to get into ever on the air. But I don't. It's not a monolith. The Jewish people are not a monolith, and I think it's really, really impressive that they are able to network in such a way, and they do it. They have fun with it, like they do it through having like events and organizational events, and so it's really impressive how they're able to manage that level of community, and I think that's how they were able to garner their position of influence in the world today. I don't think it's as conspiratorial as people make it out to be. I think it really is a symbol of the power of community and something that we should all learn from and download, right? The TUC declined to comment on whether it had previously requested workers wear colors representing one side in a conflict. However, it admitted that it has never asked its members to wear Ukrainian colors during the ongoing conflict with Russia. And that, in the West, in Western propaganda, has been much more of a one-sided perspective, right? So it's really interesting that they would be taking that perspective now. And I think it goes to show how the institutions in the UK government have really just ceded themselves to the Middle Eastern influences that they're bringing in, right? The Board of Deputies of British Jews issued a statement directed at both unions. Whatever the stated intent, attempts to bring this issue into the workplace in such a fashion will undoubtedly add to the belligerent atmosphere which many Jewish staff have been facing. And that's true, man. That's true. What people don't realize is on the Palestinian side of the narrative, there is a lot of foreign propaganda that pushes anti-Semitism, right? It's not all anti-Semitism. There's a lot of people that just want the bloodshed to end. But there is a lot of anti-Semitism pushed by foreign state actors that makes its way through the gaps, and they're doing it on purpose. And in a lot of ways with this intifada and global revolution narrative and all this stuff, yes, dude, they're pushing anti-Semitism. There's serious tension between Jewish and Muslim communities, bro. Serious tension. And it's we don't want that brought over over the ocean and over here into the borders of our country at all, right? And so in order for us to stay away from that, I think globally and on the international stage, we need to be a vested stakeholder in the de-escalation of the conflict in Israel with Palestine, right? Anti-Israel bias. In September, a report from The Telegraph based on research led by British lawyer Trevor Asserson showed the BBC had breached its editorial guidelines for news coverage more than 1,500 times since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. The research found that was deeply worrying, a pattern of bias against Israel, and that Israel was associated with genocide 14 times more than Hamas terrorist group throughout the analyzed BBC coverage. Okay, well, they are carpet bombing everybody, bro. So, I mean, there is that. So it's a nuanced situation, man. It's a nuanced situation, bro. You know, and no, the BBC should not be taken aside. No, the BBC should not be wearing Palestinian colors on air in an official capacity. If individual members of these unions want to do this separately, like on their own time, on their own channels, whatever, yeah, dude, go for it, man. But dude, we need to have institutions that we trust to not be biased, dog. And for things to go this way consistently, man, and for the narrative to be pushed like this, and for the UK to be falling into this multicultural trap. See, the issue is not multiculturalism. See, we have a problem in our zeitgeist and our dialogue in this country, in the world, really, where nuanced conversations are far gone for sensationalism, right? And so, dude, the issue is not multiculturalism. The issue is not balancing multiculturalism with assimilation and helping all of those disparate communities share a cohesive identity, right? That's the issue, man. And so, you know, I thought this was a really great opportunity to kind of go over those things. I thought it was a really great opportunity to kind of touch on the nature of how the Jewish community is able to entrench themselves in positions of influence and kind of approach, the more conspiratorial aspects of that, because I from my experience and looking in as someone on the outside, very close, right, through that part of time in my life where I was doing that work, it's not like that at all. It's really an impressive community networking vibe that so many other communities could learn from. Like, seriously, guys. And so, yeah, definitely. I think that's the takeaway. And thank you so much for joining me. We got one that wasn't about Trump today. How about that? So, hey, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.